bombshell that no one seemed to care about, actually, but it was a bombshell for me. The MLB made a change to players say shrink the zone, and it caught them by surprise. Little backstory on the unveiling or how this unfolded behind the scenes for me, because I didn't help write this article. It was written by Jason Stark, Ken Rosenthal. It says, and others, and the others were Eno Saris. So this is funny. I know they had a lot of people help them out, but the three authors were Eno as well. I do a pod with Eno. I say that every week, but he was trying to get the story figured out. They were trying to figure out when it was going to go live when we were recording the show last week. So I got to see like how that all works, which was interesting. But let me just give you a little back story on a little context on how this all kind of happened. All right. So in spring training, as many of you remember, we saw the introduction of the ABS system in Major League games for the first time. ABS system is the automated robot strike zone. There are two ways that the minor leagues have been testing it for the last couple of years. One of which is the umpire has a headpiece in, and someone in the booth is just saying, hey, that's a strike or that's a ball. And then they call it. So they don't actually call anything anymore. It's all done by a robot. That's boring, and I hate that. The other version would be the challenge system. That's what we saw in spring training. Umpires are calling the strike zone the way they always have, and then each team has a certain number of challenges. You tap top of your head, and then they go to the system and they check. So that way it becomes more of a skill. If you get it right, you get to keep it. If you get it wrong, you lose it. Same way that throwing out that red flag and doing an instant replay would work. We rolled that out. It's been tested in the minors, I believe since 2022, maybe the very end, or maybe they did independent ball in 22, and then 23 it went to the minor leagues. Regardless, I actually went down in 2023 to Salt Lake, and actually a game in Sacramento too, but in Salt Lake to rehab, to get back in shape after my anxiety stint, okay, IL stint. When I got there, I was told, hey, here's which system you're using. So I got to pitch 3 times. I believe I pitched once with the ABS challenge, or 2 with the ABS challenge system, and 1 just ABS straight up. And one of the questions I had for my pitching coach was, where's the strike zone? Okay. Unfortunately, he didn't know. This was a quote. He said, the zone's smaller, but I can't tell the pitchers exactly how. We just know it is. It seems up and down have tightened up, but we haven't gotten clear information on how much it's tightened up. Meaning, strike zone got shorter, okay? And that's just part of like figuring out how this thing's gonna work, okay? So I was actually, then I got back to the big leagues. I was in Detroit, and there was someone who works for the Detroit Tigers, and I'm so sorry, sir, if you're watching, I cannot remember your name for the life of me, but someone who is intimate with the testing process. They are overseeing it, and I talked publicly about it a little bit. He was like, hey, let me give you some background on it. And I go, what's the biggest difficulty? It's funny, I'm interviewing this guy, but I'm in uniform and I'm in the bullpen. And he goes, the biggest difficulty is just the calibration of it, deciding how we want the robots to determine what a strike is. I don't have any graphics for this, but one big issue is where the box is. This is like one of the boxes for Hawkeye. Hawkeye is the system they use to keep track of everything. All the boxes and the number of boxes and sensors is different in every stadium. It needs to be calibrated very succinctly to be consistent in every stadium. They want to have that locked down before it goes to the major leagues. That makes sense, okay? Also, there is a second benefit, or there's a second goal. Increased offense in the league. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but that is something that the league wants. They want more runs being scored. I understand why that's fun. I'm gonna take my pitcher hat off for now and not get mad about pitchers giving up more runs being what everyone wants, okay? Though I had to say all that, of course. There's been some tightening happening. It was happening then, we knew about it, but they were like, I'm like, is it a 2D zone? Is it like a piece of paper put on the plate and then it's like on the front of the plate, and if it crosses that plane, that's a strike? Or is it a 3D zone where it's a box, where if it touches any of it, like does half the ball need to be in the strike zone? Or if it just touches it, does it need a strike zone? Or does it need to be more than half the ball? And so all of these questions have been being chewed on and tested at the league side. So it's changing. It changes regularly. If the minors didn't matter before, oh my God, do they not matter now? So basically it's a moving target that no one really knows the answers to, but that's just the nature of the game. Like, you're in the minors, you know that stuff's gonna happen. Sometimes you go out there and you throw them out and you're like, how is this regulation? And it turns out it's not. So, you know, that's a big hang with them. That's what we say. we now have confirmation, and this was just realized. Basically, in the major leagues this year, there was a bunch of weird isolated anecdotes happening where guys were like, is this strike zone smaller? One of the quotes given in the article, which I would highly recommend you go to The Athletic and read the whole thing. I don't want to break this whole thing down by word for word because I want you guys to go read it because they did work really hard on it. They did great reporting. Travis d'Arnaud had a conversation with an umpire, and the umpire said, how do you like the new strike zone? And Travis said, what are you talking about? What do you mean a new strike zone? That's a weird thing to say. Hitters have been like, oh, it feels tighter to me. And pitchers have definitely noticed that it feels tighter, meaning the edges are called less and there's more missed strikes happening in the strike zone than basically strikes being called out of the strike zone, just overall. So guys weren't feeling it, they're noticing it. But one big thing were the nerds. The nerds were noticing it because all their models were off. Eno said to me, for somehow only three catchers are above average in receiving. That doesn't make sense. That's not how numbers work, but it's because their calibration of what a strike was and what stealing a strike meant. Like, you got to know what the strike zone is. That's part of the equation. So if the strike zone's different, then it's going to throw the model off. So their model was off, and they're like, why are all our models off? Then there was executives for other teams saying, yeah, we've been trying to figure out why our models are off for like 2 weeks. It's because a lot of them are built around a standardized strike zone that has been calibrated, and it has been the same way for a long time. So what happened? This is what happened. We now have this confirmation. The umpires union in the offseason negotiated with the commissioner's office. They have their own CBA, just like the players do, okay? That, among other things, changes to the buffer zone. I'll get into the buffer zone in a second. But the changes to the buffer zone from 2 inches all the way around the strike zone to 3/4 of an inch on either side of the edge of the strike zone, okay? So that's 1.5 inches of width total, but it's been moved in. Okay, so yeah, this is what the ABS looks like. You notice that the strike zone looks a little bit more like a square, not a rectangle. It's because it's a square. So this is what I was seeing too. I was like, why do the bottom and the top look shorter? It's because they are, okay? But this is the buffer zone, all right? The orange here is the old buffer zone. The blue is the new buffer zone. What a buffer zone means is not that that is a strike now. It is if an umpire calls that incorrectly, and because it was on the outside, all the calls were strikes because those are technically balls, and you're in the buffer zone, it's a close enough. So when you're being evaluated, you're either not dinged for that or you're barely dinged for it at all, right? There's a grading system, and why the grading system is important is it determines whether or not you're sent down, relegated to the minors, determines whether or not you get playoff games, which is more money. It's important, right? You want to be the best at this, and so knowing where the edges are is important. The buffer being 2 inches is the width of the ball. So basically, if the ball's fully in the buffer zone, you can assume that it's touching the zone, so it's okay if that's a strike. That moving in now has created two things. One, it's only 3/4 of an inch outside of the zone now. So that's not a full ball length, right? So now if it's outside of that, where it would have been in the old buffer zone by 1.25 inches, it's no longer in there and you're gonna get dinged for it. So umpires really quickly are like, I have to tighten up or I'm gonna get in trouble quickly I need to adjust immediately. I can't adjust slowly over time. That makes sense. So what is your natural inclination? Just call a ball, because that way you won't be wrong, right? It's incentivizing calling balls. But it has more accurately tightened to the strike zone. So the zone itself is the same, the buffer zone is different, which has changed the psyche of the umpires, which is going to tighten the zone by nature. All of that stuff, honestly, not bad changes. Interesting changes. Cool. All right, I get it. So now we have umpires seeing a pitch on the edge and they're like, ball. So what we're getting is 1.4 more balls called in the strike zone a game than we did before. Now, that doesn't sound like very much, but over an entire season, 6,500 total strikes will be missed. And this is overwhelmingly to the benefit of hitters, not pitchers. This helps pitchers 0. And it helps hitter 100%. But remember, we want more offense. I get it. This is a quantifiable change. It makes sense. Now, this might sound like a rule change to you, but technically, it is bringing them closer to the rule that's on the books. So the rule didn't change itself. So The commissioner's office does not need to include the Players Association in the negotiation because it's not a rule change technically. That said, there were 20 executives, players, and coaches asked if they knew about this change to make this article. 0 of the 20 said they remember hearing anything about this going through. That is the issue at hand at this point, okay? So, the commissioner's office, this is Rob Manfred, and this is his little best friend, Morgan Sword. Morgan Sword is the deputy commissioner and the chief economics officer for the league. Mark my words, this guy is the next commissioner after Rob retires. This guy's gonna take over, okay? So, these two guys are on top of this thing. They said that they told people 3 separate times. They said they told them in November when the rule was being negotiated, so it hadn't been put in place, so that's just anecdotal. I don't know why anyone would remember that. Then in December, there was a memo sent out during the December winter meeting saying, hey guys, by the way, the strike zone, the buffer zone's changed, and blah, 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 blah. They said they sent it, sent it to all the teams, yet nobody, as far as I'm aware, to this point, has produced that memo. It was presumably sent to hundreds of people. Not a single person could find it in their email. So there's 2 things happening here, right? There is the strike zone's changed, and then nobody was told. So why do you think people being told about the strike zone changing is important? And this is the thing that I have issues with. 1, tell everybody that it affects. This has been an issue in the past where I think there was very little thought put into the effects that it's going to have on the people who actually make the whole product. That is really frustrating to me to hear. And then the way that it's handled, denied, or like, hey, bro, no, we didn't, it's your fault, blah, blah, blah. And when it probably was a mistake, even if it was a mistake, it's okay if it was a mistake, but the lack of accountability ever, or good faith ever, is what drives me insane. So you gotta tell the players and the coaches and the people who make decisions when things like this are changing, whether or not you wanna get flack. I understand how they don't want the players to get all mad about it and they don't want to hear it anymore and this, that, and the other. But I have another thing to say. Tough life. Sorry. You chose the job. This is how it works, right? Push and pull. You don't just get to do things and then just act like everyone's stupid after they're mad about it, right? That is one thing that just can't happen. So whether or not it happened, allegedly they sent it. I'm big on proof, but it's neither here nor there. That was one issue that a lot of people had and was frustrating. So not knowing, you're maybe making stupid decisions because you don't know what's going on. That can be really annoying, especially when you're battling for a job or something. You're like, oh, okay, I just was thrown to the edge that wasn't there. Is it a huge effect? Not a massive effect, but psychologically it can be. And just knowing allows you to wrap your head around. It's like it's like if I showed up one day, they're like, by the way, there's a pitch clock today. Like that I need to change some things. If that happened, that would have been a crazy story. Who knows? Did they do it? Did they not do it? I'm going by my own personal experience and the way that everything's handled all the time, and it's always done in this little like sneaky just say it and move on, like it's going to be okay. So there is a meeting, there is a competition committee meeting. I call it the 7-4 or the 11-0 because players will never win because of the way it's set up. But they're having a meeting where they're going to discuss it, and then if there's a vote called, inevitably the players will lose. So here's the pros and cons of people knowing about it, and then we'll talk about the zone itself, because I do think it's a good change overall. This is the weird thing about this. It's good. It's good for the game. I understand it. Like we would understand, but I think players would understand if they were told. So pros and cons for the strike zone changing. Okay, more pros. Depends on your perspective here, but pros. More offense.
Yippee!
So far, batting average is up 2 points. OPS is up a couple points. Good. Less strikeouts, also associated with more offense. Strikeouts are down 0.5% this year. Better for product. Guys are getting on base. We're getting stolen bases. We got Chandler Simpson running around. Like the game is kind of going back towards the way it used to be, which is good. But I think most of that is natural. More calls being made correctly is another pro. Of course, that's great. I think the umpires are better this year than they've ever been. And I want to give them their flowers. You guys are crushing it. Some of you still are pretty rough, but there's far less of you that are rough than are good. So that's good. I'm happy with that. Strike zones are more consistent, so everyone knows what it is too. It's not so like loosey-goosey. It's very tighter means clearer, which is clarity is good. Okay. The cons though, is incentivizing calling more balls for the umpires so they don't get in trouble. That's probably not great for pitchers. More advantage is artificially given to hitters. It makes pitchers miss over the plate more because they're trying to throw more of the plate. That's going to be an advantage to the hitters. Catcher performance metrics are just now crazy different, right? So now catchers don't know if they're good or not, which catchers are the most valuable, one of the most valuable, if not the most valuable position on the field. And if you take away defensive ways to stand out defensively, that's going to hurt a lot of guys' careers. And catching's really freaking hard. To both hit and be defensively good is so hard. I don't want catchers sacrificing defense just because it doesn't matter anymore. That's not good for pitchers either. So 0 for 3 for pitchers, and then walks could possibly explode. So this is a con. Like if you don't know where the strike zone is, there's gonna be way more walks, and there has been, but walks always even out, and I'll talk about that in a minute. They even out mostly because you just don't get to be in the big leagues if you walk a lot of guys usually. If you walk a ton of dudes, that's sin number one. Mortal sin number one. You can't walk people and stay in the major leagues. So that's why the walk rate is always between 8 and 9% every year, no matter what. And it will end that way too. So that's kind of already built in, all right? So that's what's wrong if you change the strike zone. But what if you don't tell anybody about it? If you don't tell anyone about it, here's the pros for the league. No players push back, they don't have to explain themselves, and pitchers will not adjust, which will make offense go up. So those are the pros from the commissioner's office standpoint of not telling anybody. Cons, internal team models are thrown off, so teams have trouble evaluating things that are related to the strike zone. Neither hitters nor pitchers know what the strike zone is. So in general, it could backfire. No one knows what the hell's going on. There are a lot of frustration can happen, a lot of changes happening that are based not in reality. It could just mess things up, throw the equilibrium off. Miscommunication with umpires. Umpires know there's a tighter zone. Pitchers don't know. They're yelling at each other. And if the pitcher just knew, he wouldn't yell. I'm out there trying to determine whether or not my eyes are telling me something that is true or false. I don't want to look like an idiot because the ball's right there that was in the buffer zone that would normally be called a strike that isn't because the rules changed. And I don't know that, but I'm yelling about it as if I know, but I don't. That's another con. And then game plans can get thrown off, right? You're like, oh, I can hit that spot, but I can't hit that spot. Now I need to figure things out. So a lot of things are based on the strike zone. It's almost like, I feel like it's one of those things you don't think about the strike zone until it changes. It's like, you don't think about your back until you hurt it, right? So this is what they've noticed, and it turns out there has been a rule put in play. So just be paying attention, in conclusion, to this meeting on Friday, what comes out about it. Do I know that any of this was done to be malicious or on purpose or just to screw certain players over, screw pitchers over or whatever? No, I don't know that stuff. It's all alleged, and I'm just going off intuition based on how other decisions were made. When the balls were changed in 2019, they still deny that to this day. It is clear as day it was done on purpose. The data shows it. It's one of those things that the ball's another thing that they can just do, and we can't do anything, the players can't do anything about it because it's not in the CBA. And so they found as many ways to manipulate and change the game in the way they wanted to see it changed without having to get any input from the players, and this would be another example of that. But at the end of the day, it's a minimal thing. It's not a huge deal. Once you figure it out, you can make the adjustment. It's just frustrating, and I understand. Do I know for a fact that anyone lied or whatever? No. Will we ever know? No, we won't. We won't, because there's nothing to do about it. You can say, no, we didn't, forever, and eventually people just get exhausted and stop. I don't know if you guys have been alive in the world right now, but that seems like to be a much stronger tool than it should be, in my opinion, in a lot of different ways. But that is the strike zone. It is getting tighter. If you thought it was getting tighter, you were right. And now we have proof, but hope pitchers can adjust so that the game stays competitive, because I feel like hitting has come a long way, especially in the last year or so. And it is a better product. It's more fun to watch. I'm having a good time watching. I know. The pitch clock's even pretty good. I know, I'm sorry. Now that we're used to it. I'm supposed to be the one that yells about everything, but I can't always do that. So